Water, water, water. You know, I haven't done a water video because of it's just such a simple concept of good water for your orchids. It almost doesn't require a video. It doesn't require me getting out a whole bunch of different water and showing you different waters and talking about all these different waters. I mean, we'll go over them real quick, but rainwater. I collect and use rainwater. This barrel right here I'm getting ready to clean this one out tomorrow. And excuse the construction noise. Um, Still, when I checked this a few minutes ago with a meter, it's only around 18 parts per million. I don't know if you can see it, but there's actually a small frog right there. He's absorbing his tail still. There's a few tadpoles you can see on there. There's a few tadpoles in this water. I put a whole bunch of orchids in here. I let bacteria build up in this water a little bit, and I let the living life stay in this water because I use it to help inoculate. That's what I use this water for. This other water barrel next to it is around 8 parts per million. It's clean. It doesn't have anything like that in it. I don't allow life in it, or frogs or anything like that to get into it. I keep it covered. This is called a mosquito dunk, and it keeps mosquitoes. There's no mosquitoes in here. Zero. No little larvae, nothing swimming around. If you put one of these in there, and they sell them in like this, or you can get them in granules and just sprinkle a couple of granules in the water, and it'll keep the mosquitoes out of the water completely. And as you can tell from the life forms, the tadpoles and stuff swimming around, it doesn't hurt any living things. Okay, so if you want to collect rainwater and you don't want, I don't want all the bugs and stuff, there's ways around that. You can also keep a lid on this, and that keeps the mosquitoes out too. All right, or helps. But just put a dunk or something in it, and it takes care of it. And it doesn't change the pH of the water. Doesn't affect the orchids at all. Doesn't hurt anything at all. Only other thing I could really say about the water that you want to use for your orchids is when I feed my orchids, I only feed maybe 120 parts per million to begin with, 125, and everybody can feed differently. Whatever your routine is, or your feeding regimen is, that's fine. I feed around 120, 125 parts per million, usually tops. So my tap water comes out of my tap, and I have good tap water, but my tap water comes out of my tap at around, I don't know, 150, 165, depending on the day and time of the year. All right, so I'm not using it. The rainwater, once I collect it in the barrels, once it gets to be over about 20, 25 parts per million in the rain barrels, I don't use it either, unless I'm just using that for just flushing. But even if I'm just using it for flushing or just for watering, I still will adjust the pH a little bit. That's one of the reasons you saw a piece of wood floating around in there. I'll leave the wood floating in the rain barrel because it keeps the tannic acid in there, it keeps it lower. Most of that water in the rain barrel is around 6.5, 6.6. So I can add just a tiny little bit of nutrients to it, and it'll drop it down to 6.1 real easily. If you're starting with water that's at a 7 or even higher in the 8 pH range, and you try and drop nutrients to it or add nutrients to it, most orchid nutrients have enough phosphates or phosphorus bases in them that they'll drop the nutrient pH down, which is what you want. It's got to get down to the range in the low 6s or upper 5s, in that range, somewhere around there, for orchids to be able to feed off of it and be able to absorb it. So if your pH of your water is starting out too high, your nutrient mix is not going to drop it down, or you'll have to add so much nutrients that it'll be too high of a feed and you'll burn plants. Hope that makes sense. Now you can add citric acid and drop it down, but again, you're increasing the parts per million of your mix to begin with. You have to have good quality water to begin with. All right. Most RO water comes out around 7 or so, but unless you're checking it, it won't be. If your water's coming out to begin with at 8.4 and you run it through an RO system, you might be down around 7.7 or 7.6 or something at the end. It may not necessarily. It depends on the age of your filters and the type of filters you have and everything else too. So the best thing I can tell you again about water, check it. Check it with a meter. That's why they recommend rainwater, because rainwater typically has a very low pH and it usually has a low parts per million. All right, I know some parts of the country, Colorado for instance, some of Colorado water right out of the taps, 400 and 450 and 600. I've got friends out there that have water that's that high at parts per million. It's not usable for drinking hardly. All right. Bottled water's okay too. Spring water, purified water, distilled water. A lot of the ones that are made for drinking, called spring water or purified water, has additional up to 100 to 125 parts per million of sodium or even more That's put in there for flavoring and also to keep bacteria or algae from growing in it. So they sprinkle a little bit of salt in there, basically, is what they're doing. They're allowed to by the FDA and other organizations of that nature. So be careful when you buy the water, because if you're starting with water that has salt to begin with, that's no different than nutrients. And 100 ppm water is not usable for orchids, not in my opinion. So tap water's okay, but if you're using your tap water even just straight with no nutrients, if you're not adjusting the pH, it's probably not going to work. Now, there's a lot of people out there saying, I use my tap water, I use the bottled water, I'm not having any problems at all. That's fine, because your tap water happens to be really good. The pH of the water that you're purchasing happens to be okay. Or just your nutrient mix, or I don't know, just your environment is working. If it's working, that's not the issue. I'm talking about people who are having issues with their plants. That's what they're here for, looking for information. All right? And I'm trying to give them information on what can cause those issues. Tap water can really cause issues if you're not monitoring it. All right, and you don't know how to use it properly for your orchids, especially when you're using inert medias. That is one of the benefits of using bark with tap water, is it'll lower the pH of the water. Just from the bark media itself will help drop the pH if you're using tap water. If you're using an inert media like stone or gravel like I do, you need to monitor the pH of your water a little bit closer, because especially if you're using tap water. If you're using rainwater, you're probably going to be a little bit better, but even still you need to check it, because the container that you keep it in can raise it. So, again, just keep track of everything you add to your orchids. Keep track of the mix, keep track of it. You don't have to make it complicated, but if you know about a couple of these things and you check it ahead of time, then you know, all right, my water's good. You don't have to check it every time you use it. All right? Anyway, a couple of things to think about. We'll get back into water again. Have a great day.